Hello, I'm Scott. Welcome to the sixth video in our Maya table modeling tutorial series. What we've done so far is we've spawned in a polycube, we've beveled off the edges on that so that we've gotten this nice curvature. We've beveled off the top corners to give ourselves a slight edge highlight, and then we've sorted out the n-gons on top. We've spawned in a polytorus on the underside. We've changed its base geometry and applied a series of bevels to it to round out all the corners on it, on the inside and out. We've fixed the geometry on that. We've then deleted the underside faces from our table, combined the two meshes with the tabletop and the torus, and we've rebuilt the geometry on those. We then spawned in a table leg. We applied some bevels to it, and we've duplicated the table leg out to make it equidistant around the table, exactly where we need it. What we're going to do today is we're going to apply some smooth shading to the object and just check that it looks nice with that on, and then we're going to go into the UV process and we're going to apply some different materials to the object so that we can ensure that our texture density is consistent throughout the whole object, and we'll start the UV mapping process. Also, before I get started, I just want to say that in the description of this video and in my previous barrel video series, if you're ever wanting a quick reference for the hotkeys I use in the videos, all of the hotkeys are listed in the description, along with their function, the situation in which they're used, and what the buttons are for using them. So, jumping right on in, we're just going to hold space key down to get this little radial menu, and we're going to hold left click on mesh display. We're going to hover over soften edge while still holding left click down, and we're going to release while soften edge is highlighted. That's going to apply smooth shading to our object, and it's going to soften off all the shadows and make it look a bit more natural. Now that that's looking good, there's no issues appearing in the shading on the object. We're going to apply a second material to the object so that we can start the process of the UV mapping. So to do that, we're going to open up the hyper shader, which is this little blue olive up here with a little white circle in it. So if we click on this, mine has appeared on the second screen, so I'm just going to drag that in now. This shows us the materials that are applied to the object, but we need to add a new one. So to do that, we're going to click on checker square here. So if we click that, so bring this in a little bit more. Once we've clicked that, it's spawned this new material into the viewport here. I'm going to change the colours on this because I find black and white quite hard to work with. So I change mine to an orange, so make that a little bit darker, and to a blue. Let's get that, there we go. Now to make this a material we can apply, we need to hold right click on the checker node and then hover over assign material to viewport selection. If we release on that, it's going to appear in the top here as a material we can place on the object. So we want to select our mesh like so, and with the mesh selected we want to hold right click on it and we're going to assign material to selection like so. Now we can just close the hyper shade because that's that done. So the UVs aren't done on this yet, which is why we have this distortion on the ends and such. Before we go any further, I'm going to delete out our reference table just so that it's not appearing in the UV window anymore when we open that up. So we're now going to go to Windows and we're going to change our workspace to the UV workspace. So Windows, Workspaces, and then we want to go over UV editing and click on that. It's going to bring us into this split view. My Maya's just started to go a little slow, sorry. There we go. Now if we click on the table, it's going to bring up this crazy UV map that's here. We're going to slowly build that up into something more usable. So to start with, we're going to use planar maps to get all the vertical faces on the object, well, all the faces on the y-axis. So if we go into face select and we just use shift select to pick out the faces we want, and we want this edge loop running round as well. So if we click one face on the bevel loop and we double click an adjacent face while still holding shift down the whole time, it's going to give us that whole face loop running right the way around. Now what we want to do for this is we want to use a planar map. So we're going to hit create and we're going to click planar. So the way planar works is either based on the Y, the Z, or the X direction, it's going to take a flat photo looking straight down that direction of the UVs on the model. So if we click planar now, it's not picked up properly what we're doing here. It's applied it on the wrong axis, which is why we have these big color bands, because it thinks this is one long, flat, almost non-existent face. To fix that, we're just going to hit Control Z to undo. We're going to go to Create again. We're going to go down to Planar, and we're going to hit this little expansion box. If we click on that, we get this Planar Mapping Options tab. Now it's using the X-axis, and we don't want that. We want the Y, because this is going to be projected down the Y-axis. So we're just going to click Y, and then if we click Project, that's going to give us something a bit better. Now the texture density on this is off, where the squares in our checker aren't square, they're rectangular. So to fix that, we need to scale our UV space. So if we hit R while we're over the UV window here, and we just drag it out on the X until these are slightly more square. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to make this really, really big, because some of the UV areas on this are going to appear as really small, and with UVs this big, it's going to be hard to tell if faces on the side here, like this, are square or if they're really long, thin rectangles. So we want to make this really big so that we get really small squares that are definitely going to fit multiple times into this space here. We're just going to move that out of the way for now, and then we're going to go on to UV mapping this edge around here. So we're going to actually leave that. We're going to do the underside. So we're going to use Shift, and we're going to use Shift and double click on an adjacent face, and then we're just going to Shift click out all of the underside faces on the table here, like so, on this edge around the way. We're just going to pick all of these out, like so, and we're just going to do another planar again. We're going to do Create, and we're going to do Planar, and this time it should have stored. I've accidentally selected some of the top faces. So this is really easy to do. If you do this, you just keep an eye on in here what's happening. So because these have been highlighted, I just need to use Shift and click to remove these from my selection. Now that they're unselected, let's check, none of that's appeared. We're going to go back to Create, and we're just going to do Planar again, and it should have stored the Y direction as our planar direction. So if we hit that, we can now use W key and move this up to around the middle, and we know exactly what size this is going to be, because this is the underside of the face we've already UV'd. So we can just expand the scale on this until it matches at the height of the UV, and then we can just drag this out until it matches up as much as we can get it, like so. And now we can just pull that out of the way as well. And before we go further, because our projection on the Y is always either projecting down or up, one of these is going to have been projected back to front because they're facing in different directions. So the way we check this is we use these three little green squares here. If I just click these, we can see in red the underside has been projected back to front. It's really easy to fix this. What we do is we hold right click and we go to UV shell while we're in the UV editor side. We click on the UV shell that's in red, we click on modify, and we click flip, and that will reverse the UVs back around for us. We can now turn off that little checker view by just going back into the white one here. For the next video, we're going to keep using planar maps to start blocking out more and more of the areas on the model, and then we're going to finish up with an automatic map to catch some of the smaller faces. I'll catch you in the next video for that. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.